Hanukkah. Thank you, Wendy Baldinger, for your beautiful music. I see the Rolling Stones print in the background. Keith Richards has nothing on you. In fact, Keith Richards should be proud to be in your presence. That's all I have to say. Welcome, everyone. Steve Huddigs, JCRC. Welcome to our Hanukkah party for this year. As Ethan Roberts likes to say, let's make it the one and only time we have a virtual Hanukkah party. But nevertheless, let us celebrate together the simcha of the holiday. Judy Cook, our board chair, she extends her thanks. You'll hear from her later. And I thank Judy and all of our officers and our board members too. Ethan Roberts, our impresario for tonight. Sammy Rahamin is at JCRC Mission Control. Today is also a red letter day because our 2020 impact report came from the press. Now, of course, every year we execute an impact report. This year, though, it was completed virtually except for the approval of the printer's proof. So completely done at distance remotely. Remarkable effort. Thank you to Anthony Sussman, Susie Greenberg, Ruth Solon, Lisa Farrar. And we're maybe going to show a picture of the annual report, but at some point it'll probably pop up. Our staff has done remarkable work, my team, our colleagues, everybody this year at distance. And I'm going to identify everybody that I didn't mention in connection with the impact report. Cheryl Snitkin, Dan Pleckenpool, Sally Abrams, Holly Broad-Farber, Paul Stevenson, Barb Yanish, our JCRC team, very proud of them. We have something of more than 100 years or 93 years together collectively. Remarkable, remarkable, remarkable. Chag Sameach, everyone. Hope and vaccinations are on the way. Let's remember to thank our medical workers, our first responders, our military, our essential workers, everybody who are working so hard to keep us safe, keep us well these days. I'd like to show a picture that is what I would say is highly appropriate now, because today, earlier in the day, we had a session. There we go. Well, there's the impact report. Perfect. There it is, the cover. You'll soon be receiving it in person. Sammy, if we can show the picture of Ordinelli, that would be terrific right now. There we have it. So this morning, we had a little discussion gathering with Ordinelli, who's Deputy Ambassador of Israel to Ethiopia. And he had, of course, had lit his candles. So this is the candle lighting from Addis Ababa, the Hanukkah, with Ordinelli. Our conversation with Daniel Ashheim, the Deputy Consul from Chicago, was about Jews of Ethiopia and the recent 2 plane loads of Ethiopian Jews who have arrived as part of 2,000 who will come hopefully by the end of January, celebrating the Aliyah of Jews of Ethiopia. But it unites Jews around the world, lighting the Hanukkah, as we say, here from Ethiopia. Speaking of diplomats, I want to welcome Canada's Consul General to Minneapolis, Ariel Deloya, who has lit Hanukkah throughout the world and is with us tonight. So welcome, Consul General Ariel. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Some other welcomes, Judge John Thunheim, the Chief Judge of the Federal District of Minnesota, and we have a kind of a cohort of Concordia grads tonight with us. We have the Chief Judge, our honoree Paul Anderson, and then joining us from Moorhead, our Bill and Ann Kraft. Bill is the president of Concordia College, so welcome. And as I said before, Bill, we're looking forward to returning to the in-person Concordia Christmas concert at Orchestra Hall. I know, as you said, they'll soon release the virtual version of the Christmas concert, which is always one of the great highlights of the year. Speaking of Judge Thunheim, my former boss and our former Attorney General and wonderful friend Skip Humphrey is with us tonight. We certainly express our condolences on the loss of Lee, but thanks for joining us tonight. Skip, Representative Lynn Carlson is with us tonight. He is retiring as the longest serving member of the Minnesota legislature in the history of the Minnesota legislature. So well done, Representative Carlson. Some friends from the Minnesota National Guard who are with us, Major General retired Rick Nash, Chaplain Buddy Wynn, Lieutenant Colonel Ed Suarez. So thank you very much. Speaker Melissa Hortman, Majority Leader Winkler. Thank you. And I always say this, whenever Harold Smith is aboard, Kenahora, Harold is 100 years old. He's with us tonight. Thank you, Harold. So many wonderful things about Harold. One of my favorites is he played in the University of Minnesota Marching Band in 1940 and 1941. So he would have played for the national championship Gopher football teams in both of those years, 8-0, 8-0, 16 consecutive wins for those 2 years.
Steve, we've lost your audio.
I was just saying, Todd Leonard, president of the Minneapolis Jewish Federation, Mark Adelman, the immediately past president, is with us tonight. So thank you, everybody that's coming. And one final thank you to the Sufganiyot, Steve Silberfarb and Duncan Stevie, and our former executive director of the JCRC, now owner of 2 Dunkin' Donuts franchises, and he provided the Sufganiyot. So make sure you get your jelly donuts by the end of the evening. Thank you, everybody, for attending from near and far, virtually, hopefully next year in person. Wendy, maybe you could help us with the music. Everybody, if you can, light your Chanukiot. I'm not going to quite light mine because I'm holding mine in my hands, but maybe as best we can, we'll light our Chanukia. Everybody can participate. And Wendy Baldinger, thank you again for participating tonight. Will lead us in the bracha, or brachot.
Absolutely. Here we go. And we light the newest candles first. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu le'adli el Hanukkah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'at Otenu Bayahim Alahem Asma. And we
thank you, Wendy.
Join me with Ma'otzur, if that's okay. Ma'otzur Yeshuati Lechana Elishabea Ti Betefilati Bisham Toda Nizabea Lietachin Matbeach Mitzar Hanabeach Azigmor Bashir Mizmor Chanukat HaMizbeach Azigmor Bashir Mizmor Chanukat HaMizbeach.
Thank you, Wendy. Ma'atzor being Rock of Ages, and the operation rescuing Ethiopian Jews is called Sur Yisrael, which is actually a line from the Declaration of Independence, Rock of Israel, which is a reference to God. So very appropriate, Wendy. Thank you for your beautiful music. And now on to our impresario for tonight, Ethan Roberts. Thank you, Ethan, for all the great work in organizing this year's JCRC Hanukkah party.
Oh, thank you very much, Steve. Yes, well, thank you everyone who's here, and we're still admitting new people in. This is a very different, obviously, evening. Typically, we always say, well, this is like a drop-in party, just come, at any point. But this is definitely the most on-time JCRC Hanukkah party we've ever had, and we wanted. Our plan was to honor Senator Paul Anderson and Senator Dick Cohen at our annual meeting this past June, which obviously did not happen because of COVID-19, and we just didn't want to go much longer without honoring both of these distinguished senators, and so they both graciously have agreed to allow us to honor them tonight at our Hanukkah party, and this is just I mean, it's honestly somewhat the least we can do because of how much they've contributed to our state, to the Senate, and to the Jewish community. Our friendship, our relationship with Senator Anderson stretches back much further than just his time in the Senate. It goes back to 1995 when he began working for Congressman Jim Ramstad, and he later served as his district director, and then of course he was also the deputy chief of staff for Governor Pawlenty. And we worked, for example, on the trade mission to Israel, and we got to know him through that, and then were really happy when he joined the Senate. He had, as we've talked about, Paul and I have become good friends. He had big shoes to fill with Senator Terry Bonoff when she left the Senate, and I'll just report she's doing very well in Atlanta, and she is the executive director of the Jewish Family and Children's Service there in Atlanta, and it's fun to have her as like a Jewish community colleague. And I'll get back to kind of the work we did with Paul in a moment. I just wanted to add, Paul is a man of really tremendous character, and I think he learned that from the best. His dad, Len, and Jim Ramstad, both of blessed memory. And Paul, we know how much you miss them both, but just know that we see the best of them in you, and that's it was a blessing to be at your father's funeral, and we just talked about Jim's funeral, which you were intensive both at the same church in Wayzata, beautiful church. It's hard to also imagine the Minnesota State Senate without Dick Cohen. After 3 non-consecutive terms in the House, he began his tenure in the Senate back in 1986. Now, as a Jewish kid from St. Paul, Dick Cohen's ambition was to become the chair of the Senate Finance Committee, which is a very specific ambition and maybe a little bit odd, but he more than fulfilled it. He didn't just become the chair of that committee, which is a very, very important committee. He went on, he has, no one except for one person in Minnesota history has served longer as the chair of that committee. And so, this is the part where I'm going to just kind of put the script aside and just speak from the heart, okay? I've been doing this for 13 years, and there are people on this call who've been doing this much, much longer. And you work with all sorts of people at the Capitol, obviously Democrats and Republicans, people from the Metro, people who are, in my case, I've gotten to try to have a relationship with all of the Jewish members. And there aren't that many more people who I've enjoyed just getting to know as people, who I've enjoyed talking with, who I've known I could count on, who I've known I could just text or call really whenever, than Paul and Dick. And you're just going to be missed tremendously. And I'll just cite one very kind of specific example. We've talked a lot at these Hanukkah parties when we honored Jennifer Loon and when we had honored Terry Bonoff at our annual event on her retirement about the Parent-Child Plus program, which also used to be known as the Parent-Child Home program. It's, of all the things I've had the privilege of working on, it's the thing I'm the most proud of. The program doesn't serve anyone who's Jewish. And it's done by Jewish Family and Children's Service of Minneapolis and their partners. And, very broad. It's something that she was interested in. JFCS have been doing it with just some private money, 10 years ago. And the program has really grown. And Lee Friedman, who I knew was on the call, the chief operating officer from JFCS, we've talked about with a lot of elected officials about the progress of this program from a handful to where it is now. And it didn't just happen. The thing about this work is you need a great program, which we have, and a great organization like JFCS and their partners to do it. But you also need help, and you need champions. And yes, Terry Bonoff and Jen Loon and others have been our champions, but all those years where we really made like the big push, Dick Cohen was part of that. And it was quiet. It was, not a lot of like fanfare about that, but Dick, Jewish kid from St. Paul, you don't need to go into the whole thing with our community. He never was like, oh, well, that's something over in Minneapolis. He always has seen himself as someone, not just part of our greater Jewish community, but understood the value of this program and how it was going to help, Minnesotans, first in the Metro and now throughout the state, overcome this opportunity gap. And when Paul came on board after Terry left, he immediately became our champion in the Senate and, picked up that baton. And I think that speaks to the bipartisan support for his program, the bipartisan work of the JCRC, and really kind of the caliber of both of these gentlemen. And looking to the Senate without them both, it's going to be a lesser place. And I know they're both still with us. This is not their funeral by any means. And I know, Dick, you're looking to get more active with Mount Zion, which you've been a member of for so long, and Paul, I'm sure, of your church, and of course your business. And both of you are, you're both small business owners, right? You both have your own businesses. And I know nothing is forever, but Dick, I kind of felt that way with the Senate, and I thought that I would leave my job before you left the Senate, but we'll just have to make on. And Paul, this friendship that we have, I hope continues. And, thank you for being my senator as well. And so I know that Steve has a couple of gifts that he wants to kind of just somewhat show to you guys through the Zoom. And then we're going to transition to both of you having some opportunity to reflect a little bit on your time. And then we'll move on with the program to our panel that our President Judy Cook is going to so ably lead us through. So thank you both.
Thank you, Ethan. Sammy, back at Mission Control, if you can pull up the pictures. I think we'll start with Anderson. We'll go in alphabetical order here. The theme of these gifts is bipartisanship. And Paul, just on a personal note, where you and I have gone to Kuwait together with serving our troops. We bump into each other at Gopher football games on the plaza at TCF Bank Stadium. And I always get a big smile when I see you, Paul. You just evoke that emotion. You're just a friendly, wonderful guy. And it's been great working with you. And we'll continue working together. And we share a lot of common passions. So that's terrific. But when I think of you, I think of bipartisanship. And I found this, and we get a frame for you, this wonderful picture that my picture of the picture doesn't do justice to it, but from a great memorabilia place called Ferber. And it's pictures of President Hoover and Truman together in 1962, I believe. And there's a whole great story behind that because President Hoover had been sort of persona non grata for a long time. And when Truman became president, he invited Hoover back to the White House. In fact, gave Hoover a significant amount of responsibility with respect to post-war famine relief in Europe, which reprised a role that he played famine relief after World War I. And the two, not without their differences, even after they sort of reconciled in their own way, but it was an important time of sort of national reconciliation. President Truman recognized it was important to have President Hoover back in the good graces of the entire nation. And I see that in you, one who's always been willing to reach out in a bipartisan manner, ever so critical, never so more critical today, and the health of our democracy depends upon it. So thank you, Paul, for that important role that you played amongst other important roles. And I hope you'll enjoy this picture. I've got to get it framed for you, so it'll be some time probably before I get it to you, but in due course. Congratulations, Paul. Dick, our families have gone back a long ways, and that's just not my dad. Richard Hunnigs and Dick Cohen go back a generation or so. And then, of course, on my wife's side, Jennifer Robbins, my father-in-law, Stan Robbins, and you go back a long ways. So this is family. It's mishpacha when I'm talking to you, Dick. And so many issues, so many times we've talked over the years about really sensitive matters. You're one of those people who has great seichel, great wisdom, someone many people can count upon. And you do it in a quiet, effective manner. There are so many people in institutions and arts and people who have benefited from your vision over the years that they're, in a way, sort of subtle, implicit landmarks to you throughout the state. And so thank you and congratulations. What I have here, speaking of bipartisanship, is something else that I found for you, which I'll get framed. It's the Treasury Department inauguration, January 20, 1941. It was a special pass. Of course, that was the inauguration, third inauguration of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And I know you are in some ways a great New Dealer at heart. And so this is something to remember. But in the bipartisan theme, the night before the third inauguration, January 19th, who was it that met with Roosevelt but Wendell Willkie? Because Roosevelt was sending Wendell Willkie on a special mission to meet with Prime Minister Churchill in England. Now, get this. They had just finished, at times, very heated presidential race, November, whatever the date was, 1941. But 2 months later, there they are meeting together the night before the inauguration, and President Roosevelt is preparing Wendell Willkie to go on this very important mission because they both knew that well beyond partisanship was the values of the country and the strategic safety of this country in light of the Nazi threat in Europe. But that was another great example of bipartisanship. So Dick, You've always worked in a bipartisan manner. I hope when you look at this ticket, you'll remember Roosevelt and Wilkie and what that meant for this country. So Mazel Tov, Dick, Mazel Tov, Paul. It's a pleasure working with both of you. We'll continue working together. Ethan, great job with honoring our two distinguished state senators today. And why don't we, in remarks, just go in order. Maybe we'll go reverse order this time. We'll go with Dick and then we'll go with Paul. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, both Steve and Ethan. This is to be honored by the Jewish community of the Twin Cities in Minnesota. The JCRC is just for me unbelievable, and also excited to be here with Paul, who I've enjoyed serving with for the past 4 years. First worked with Paul when he was deputy chief for Governor Plenty, and just to bring it, full circle, my first term in the Senate was Jim Ravestad's last term before he ran for Congress. I do want to make, if you'll allow me, just one correction. Ethan, it's not when I was a kid that I wanted to be chairman of the Senate Finance Committee. That would be really sad. It was my first term in the Senate, when I was more of a kid, when I thought this would be an interesting committee to someday try to be chairman of. But let me just offer a couple of thoughts and thanks to what the Jewish community not only has done for myself, but what the Jewish community has done for hopefully making me a better legislator. And if I hope you don't mind a partisan note, I apologize for this, but just illustrative of what the Jewish community has done for me. When I first ran for the House, you mentioned hopefully Harold Smith is part of this. He'll remember years ago. My district was a mixture politically, and I ended up being the first Democrat elected in the history of my area to the state house, and I had to figure out how to become comfortable campaigning. And I'd campaigned for lots of folks before that, and I was just a kid, 25. And so I started campaigning in what was the heart of Highland Park, where I now live on Boland Avenue. And because I knew that precinct was 95% Jewish at the time, and either people would know me, they know my parents, there might be folks living at home who were friends of my younger brother and sister, or when I said my name was Dick Cohen, I'd get a nice reception. And it started my political association with the Jewish community over the years. What's more important, though, is what the Jewish community brought to myself growing up. Just the concept of social justice, the concept of mitzvah, was ingrained in me from the time I, as best I know, started at Mount Zion Synagogue when I was in kindergarten or first grade. And if you allow me just one anecdote that's illustrative of that, if this is okay. For those of you who are longtime members of Mount Zion or were members of Mount Zion, there was an assistant rabbi in the first part of the 60s, Rabbi Gerald Goldstein. And I can't tell you how excited I was and how just knocked out I was when I picked up the headline, the front page of the St. Paul newspaper one day, to learn that Rabbi Goldstein had been arrested in St. Augustine in marching and picketing with a variety of clergy of all faiths in St. Augustine. I was just really proud that my rabbi would be at the forefront that day of the Southern Civil Rights Movement. It wasn't until many years later, as I read more and more about the Southern Civil Rights Movement, that marching through St. Augustine at that time was just plain dangerous. It was truly a Klan town at that time. But that was illustrative of what I learned from the Jewish community, and hopefully have been able to bring some of that to the state legislature over the years, just hopefully in what I've done, what I've represented, and obviously some of the particular issues that I've enjoyed working on, even what to maybe a broader Minnesota community seemed like a small issue, but an example would be getting approval for the kosher food differential, which obviously made a huge difference to the residents of Sholem Home West and later Sholem Home East, where the folks there want to maintain that differential and to be allowed to make sure that there was a waiver to allow kosher food to be served without any additional expense. But there's so many other issues that I've had the chance to work on over the years, both directly for the Jewish community, the BDS issue, the anti-BDS issue, other issues involving the Sholem home, but most importantly, the fact that my Jewish faith has been imbued with what I think I hopefully have tried to do as a politician, as a legislator, and irrespective of issues, hopefully that's made a big difference for myself. I know it's made a big difference for myself. And so that's why this evening, even with this Zoom ceremony, is just so meaningful for me at the end of my 40 years in the state legislature to be honored by the Minnesota Jewish community. This is really, really meaningful. Thank you very much to the leadership of the JCRC, the board of the JCRC, and most importantly, the Jewish community of Minnesota, which has meant so much to me, both personally and as a legislator.
Paul. Thank you,
Steve. Yeah, Steve and Ethan and Judy and everybody, thank you so much. What an honor it is to be with all of you tonight, to share this moment with Senator Cohen. I told Ethan today, this is far above me to be included in a Zoom being honored with someone like Dick. And I consider Dick a friend, and many of the legislators on this call have become friends over the last few years. But I just want to say happy Hanukkah to everybody. Both our girls, Lacey and Maggie, the last day and a half here have been talking about how much they enjoyed coming to this party with me the last couple of years. They asked me how we're doing latkes this year. I told them we got donuts instead. Those are fantastic. So thank you to Dunkin' Donuts for the great treats for all of us. And hopefully next year we can be back in person once again, because I'd love to come back and just continue this great tradition. It's just wonderful. Ethan and I were talking about one of the best parts outside of the lighting of the menorah and just the community, the coming together and being able to talk and catch up. And so I just want to thank you for that. Thank you to JCRC for being such a wonderful and valued organization of true bipartisan, nonpartisan organization at the Capitol, which is very rare, as many of you understand. We all have our issues. We come and we have our values and principles. We get elected and we come to the Capitol, and there's few organizations that come and work across the aisle and on issues that are so critical. And I know there's opposition at times, but I just so appreciate the advocacy of board members and community members, and of course the staff. Steve Honeggs, you mentioned it. He's been a friend for many, many years, just a true advisor. I'm so grateful for his friendship, and I too get the greatest kick. It seems like we're always walking into TCF Stadium at the same time, coming into the end zone as we're heading to both sides of or different sides of the stadium. So I love you, Steve. Thanks for your kind words. And Ethan, it has been a pleasure to get to know you these last 4 years. I remember being at the event that JCRC honored Senator Bonoff and then Congressman Paulson. And I just thought, wow, if I could win my election, which was not easy, and be able to go and serve in the Senate and work with an organization like JCRC, like I had in other positions, but in the Senate, would be an awesome, awesome experience. And that dream came true. And I'm so grateful for the opportunities to work on parent-child home program, anti-BDS legislation. I don't know if Senator Latz, who's on the call, will remember this, but it was odd for me within the first, I think, 6 weeks of being in the Senate. We had the anti-BDS legislation come to the floor, and here I'm a co-author with Senator Latz, Senator Limmer, Senator Cohen, and I thought, this is how it's supposed to be. Strange bedfellows in the Senate at times, but at the same time coming together to work on really, really important legislation. And Senator Latz came up to me as we were walking out of the chamber and just said, thank you. And I don't know if he remembers that, but that made a big impact on me. And I appreciate the time that we've worked together as well. And Judy Cook, who has been a dear friend for many years, she helped organize and traveled with us to Israel exactly 12 years ago when we did the state trade mission to Israel. Some of you were on the trip. It was an incredible experience, built some great relationships, trade opportunities between our state and Israel. And so I just, again, as I reflect on this, thank you for those of you who came down to the Capitol. visited, called, texted, emailed. I hope I did. Those of you who lived in Senate District or live in Senate District 44, I hope I did a good job representing you, and I look forward to being in connection and helping out JCRC in any way I can in the years to come. So thank you again for the recognition.
Thank you, Paul. It looks like in the background you have a framed picture of the state flag of Minnesota, and of course our state motto is Etoile du Nord, Star of the North, and both Dick and Paul are Stars of the North. So thank you very much for your service. It's now my great pleasure to introduce our board chair, Judy Cook. Judy, both Dick and Paul have recognized you, and your work so important, so tremendous. Because of your experience at the Capitol, it's as though we, in a way, can clone Ethan, or maybe it's we've cloned Judy, one of the two, because both of you are a remarkable team at the Capitol. And Judy, all of your work is so deeply appreciated. It gives us so much strength at the Capitol in so many different ways. We've had the succession of remarkable JCRC presidents. You are the latest in the line. You'll be followed by John Peretz and J.C. Grace and Martin Chester, your predecessor, and we're so proud of all of them. And so, Judy, thank you for all that you do for so many different communities. We'll have many times over the next 2 years to thank you for your service, but this is a great time to start at Hanukkah 2020. So thanks so much. And Judy, why don't you take the program from here, and all the best to you and Richard, okay?
Well, thanks, Steve, and happy Hanukkah and happy holidays to everyone. I also want to acknowledge and recognize and thank Senator Cohen and Senator Anderson, two very, very good friends and people who've really just been amazing legislators and true, policymakers, and making sure that our state moves forward. So thank you, and wish you all the best. And you won't be rid of me. I will still be bothering you, I'm sure. And now I want to turn over to our legislative panel, who we are very excited to have. Richard and Brian and I have been very fortunate to travel on all of the 3 Israel study missions that we've had with legislators. They are bipartisan, bicameral, and our panel today represents legislators from all of the, each of the 3 trips. And I'll give a very brief bio, and then we can hear from our legislators. I do want to acknowledge that we were in special session yesterday, and I think the House finished at 2:30 in the morning. So thank you very much to the House members for being here, particularly Speaker Melissa Hortman, who was first elected in 2004 and represents Brooklyn Park and Coon Rapids. Representative Tony Albright, who's an assistant minority leader. He was first elected in 2012, representing Shakopee, Prior Lake, and Spring Lake Park. Senator Karin Housley, assistant majority leader, first elected in 2012, representing Stillwater, Forest Lake, and several other communities along the St. Croix River. And Senator Melisa Franzen, incoming assistant minority leader, first elected in 2012 as well, representing Edina and portions of Bloomington and Minnetonka. And so, we have a couple questions for you that I hope our folks on here will find interesting, and we have just an amazing turnout this evening. The first question is, and we hear this from a lot of folks, people really care about a variety of different issues. And what would be your advice to members of the public for how they should engage with their legislators on issues they care about? They can't come up for days on the Hill. Everything's on Zoom for the most part. What is your recommendation on the best way for folks to engage with their legislators? And I will start with our esteemed speaker.
Well, thank you, Judy. It's so nice to see everybody on Zoom. Regret that we can't be in person and eating together. But the best way to keep in touch with legislators, I think, is sending an email. I think you want to make sure that you have that ongoing relationship with your state representative and your state senator. I think always including your street address, so we can see where you live in our district, but also even if you're outside of our district, a very short, succinct email about why you're writing. We are, like everybody else, we're addicted to these devices. And so we will instantly see that you have written to us and what you have written about. And then if we need help answering your question or taking action, we can forward your email to staff and get you what you need. So I think the best way to keep in touch is email.
Great. Representative Albright.
Thank you, Judy. I think the speaker hits on a really good point that we are going to live through an historic biennium. And I'll take just a derivation on what the speaker said. And while emails are important, I think to complement those with a phone call, and not all phone calls sadly are as important as others. And I'm not trying to denigrate anything, but I do rely upon listening to the spoken voice and hearing the inflection and hearing the sense of urgency in the voice of the person on the other end of the line. That's something that's lost in translation when you're sending an email. Now, I understand that, that there has to be a kind of determination of what deserves a phone call and what deserves an email. But I do think that the phone calls and, the telephone skills of our elected representatives are going to be tested. And I think they're hopefully going to be improved by that as a means of communication.
Great. Senator Franzen.
Thanks, and I would echo both legislators before me, but I would say I have a pet peeve about social media because that's and I'm still very old fashioned. So I do like email and phone calls, and I do respond to emails and phone calls and even text. But social media, when even yesterday is a good example, I have a few texts that I have to respond or a few social media call outs that I have to respond to. And I don't do it on social media. I will tell them to, if it's a constituent or if it's someone else, here's my number, let's have a conversation, because I don't discuss policy to the world. I want to talk to people, and a lot of these issues are more complex than a single up and down vote. So that's my pet peeve of like, keep it old fashioned, keep it with voice messages and calls. And we have a paper trail, so we're able to really get to your question and to really service what your needs are.
Great. And I'll just change it up just a little bit for Senator Housley. And I think folks will want to know, like, excuse me, do you pay attention to the emails you get from constituents or the contacts from your constituents? Is it worth it for people to take the time to contact their legislators?
Yeah, thanks, Judy. And I want to say congratulations to Senator Cohen and Senator Anderson. I didn't get to say goodbye to you guys on the Senate floor yesterday on your last day. So congratulations to you both. And I'll shoot you a text of congratulations. But this thing is, wait, is that Richard?
Oops.
I got you, we're in the same house. But to that point, and to Speaker Hortman's too, emails do work, but I'm telling you, one of my biggest pet peeves is when you do the mass email or the bulk email. And yesterday was a case in point, like Senator Franzen said, hundreds of emails kept coming in the same, if you want to get Senator Housley's attention on this issue, just fill out this form and we'll send it to her. Those are horrible. It is almost the worst way to get our attention because it becomes spam. And we just delete because you're getting these emails from people that aren't even from your district. We want to hear from people from our district. So a personal email is the best thing that you can send, but also, especially now in this time of COVID, if the phone calls are good too, but if you could send a handwritten note, then we know it's super important to you. And we've got the time while we're sitting there to actually read those. Those are really, really important now. But I'm telling you, the worst thing you can do, and if you really want to make us angry, is to send those bulk emails through a website, contact your legislator. We just hit delete. And I'm sorry to be Debbie Downer, but a personal email or a letter is much better.
That's really good to know. So the next question is that the JCRC and much of the Jewish community is particularly concerned about our fellow Minnesotans, those perhaps from low-income families, small business owners who've been impacted by the pandemic. How can Democrats and Republicans work together to ensure that those most at risk, including young children and their families, aren't permanently left behind? I think I will start with Senator Franzen.
Thanks, Judy. And the issue that comes to mind is an issue that's both Senator Housley and I have been working on lately, which is childcare. And that's an issue that we're still working on, that we don't want to leave behind industries that are still hurting and industries that are important and critical. So they need to hear not just from us, meaning our leadership and other legislators who are negotiating these bills. They need to hear from you. So that kind of is our guard and our army behind us, that this issue is important. So, you know, how to work together on issues like that is, I think we see a lot of commonalities. And I think in this particular case, Senator Housley and I understand it as moms, and in her case, she has grandkids too. So we understand these issues, and it's hard sometimes as a policymaker to translate that to folks who might not be touched by the issue. And we make things a little bit broader, but I think it's education and talking to people about the importance of it. But when we have an army of people that are also advocates, to your earlier point, helping us and push and the importance of those issues, it just makes us stronger. So one of the things I always say is, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So you need to hear from us, but they need to hear from you. So I think it all works together, and that's how we can get more support on a bipartisan level.
Great. Representative Albright.
I serve on a number of committees that really do address kind of the heart of your question with regard to the most vulnerable amongst us. This pandemic has really been a real eye-opener to the state and to the people that are in leadership to identifying who those most vulnerable are. And you take a look at people who are struggling to keep that job in order to pay for, you know, the bills that just don't stop coming. But in reflection, they've got to find daycare that is affordable and convenient so that they can get to the job on time, but also put food on the table. You know, we talked about last night, and while we may have our differences, or Representative Liebling and I share a concern about MFIP, which is a program that would provide for $500 immediately during this holiday season into the working poor, if you will. One of the other tragic circumstances that I think a lot of people are going to recognize in the coming months is the number of people that are falling back into poverty, just because we've lost jobs, they've lost their homes, they've lost transit, any number of circumstances that have, affected us all over the last 9-10 months. It's like the perfect storm for these folks, and not in a good way. And so, as a colleague of mine a number of years ago said, if we could all check our egos at the door, can you imagine what we might do? And so I'm very hopeful that Speaker Hortman and I and others can help others within our own caucuses to move some of these agenda items forward, make sure that the most aggrieved and at risk in our society really do get the help that they need.
Thanks, Tony. Senator Housley.
As the chair of the Family Care and Aging Committee, taking care of our seniors is, Senator Rosen said to me about 8 years ago when I got into the Senate, what are you passionate about? And I said, I don't really know. I'm a small business owner. I don't know what my thing is going to be in the state Senate. And she said, you'll find it. It'll come to you. And it did. And taking care of I always say, taking care of my peeps, the old people, has become a huge passion of mine, especially during this pandemic, keeping them safe in their long-term care facilities, the assisted living and the nursing home. And Senator John Hoffman, the Democrat from Anoka yesterday said, when are we going to get our committee assignments, Senator Housley? I am hoping I can be on your committee again, because your committee is the most bipartisan committee and the most fun committee, because we never fight. We all have the same end goal, and it's doing what's best for our seniors. So that has been a true joy and honor, and a lot of work, especially now. It's scary for these folks. But that, again, what Senator Franzen said, in addition to the child care grants and making sure that all of these families that are going to work, essential caregivers, have daycare for their kids. So those are two things that have no letter behind them, no D or R or I, just doing good things for the people of Minnesota bipartisanly. A passion.
Thanks. Speaker Hortman, you're in such a remarkable position to work bipartisanly, and both, you know, in terms of the House as well as with the Republican majority in the Senate. Can you just talk a little bit about that, and how we are the only legislature that's a divided legislature in the whole country again? So maybe you can chat a little bit about that as well.
You know, one of the things that I think got Senator Gazelka and I off on the right foot is in November of 2018, not long after the election, we went out to dinner with our spouses and our chiefs of staff and their spouses, and we talked to each other as people. We talked about the fact that there's a time when we're campaigning against each other, and there's this war of ideologies, and people have on the red shirt or the blue shirt, they're on a team, and they're trying to battle it out. But when we get to the budget making session, there's no need to make unless, and most things don't have to be, and that it doesn't really have any bearing on the next campaign cycle, whether we get along, whether we do things that are to help each other out. If I make Paul Gazelka look great in 2021, it probably will have zero impact on the 2022 election. And we share that philosophy that, you know, especially in the off year, we're all on Team Minnesota, and we're about the job of governing. So we're moving into that time where in the special sessions, we've been on the floor, but in the regular session, we'll go back into the committees, and we'll be in these kind of small groups like this where people deal with each other as individuals and as people with shared interests. And I think you'll see us getting back to being Team Minnesota. And now that the campaign year is behind us, so we get ourselves off the floor, we can kind of roll up our sleeves and get back to work together.
That's great. I think that's, people are really happy to hear that. And we know it's not always easy, but this is hard work ahead of you. And my final question, since all of you were on one of our Israel missions, and by the way, for everybody to note, our next Israel trip will be November 9th through 19th, 2021. Keep our fingers crossed that we actually can go, but just wanted to know what's one of your most memorable times? And I know that's hard because it's really hard to pick out just one, but just something from the trip that you think would be really valuable to share with everybody. And Speaker Hortman, since you're right there, I'll let you go first.
Well, that is a very hard question to answer because there's so much about this trip. You know, for me, this was my first time going to Israel, and I'm a Catholic, and I describe myself as a hook, line, and sinker Catholic. Like it's all very real to me. My faith is very important to me, and to be the places where Jesus walked was, of course, you know, incredibly moving. But I thought you were going to say favorite memory from the trip, and I was going to say Dead Sea, because who would have guessed that one of my favorite lobbyists and I would be floating in the Dead Sea together. That is a pretty remarkable experience. In the fun nature, you know, there's the sort of heavy parts of the trip, but then that was incredible too.
Great. Senator Housley, you were on our first trip.
Oh my gosh, there's so many things. Just like Melissa said, being a Christian and walking where Jesus walked was amazing. The food was some of the best food I have ever eaten, and I can't tell you what I had packed in my suitcase because I knew I was not going to like the food. Brought all that food home with me because the food was amazing. The people, I thought people there were scared to live there because, you know, when you tell people you're going over to Israel, they're like, are you sure it's safe? Totally safe. And everybody there is not afraid. So it's just kind of this American way of thinking. But my favorite, which is still on my phone, I'm going to see if this works. I got baptized in the Jordan River, and it's my screensaver since 2015. Yeah, loved that trip, and I will be there next November if we go. Thanks again.
Great. Representative Albright, you were on the second trip.
Yeah, I just have to say, if there is one trip that my wife and I have always cherished, we probably talk about it at least weekly. You know, too many things, but most of our memories, I asked her tonight what her most favorite memory about it was, and you know, it usually revolved around the food that we ate. Particularly the dinner on the last evening before we flew home was phenomenal. But I will also remark about, you know, going through the open market and all of the spices and the seasonings that Richard convinced me to buy and bring home. Thank you, Richard. But also a couple people of note that I would not have gotten to know had it not been for your gracious invitation to attend the trip. And one was Mookie, who is just an absolute treasure. And he makes every trip, I'm sure, memorable for the sake of all that are on there. But it just particularly is when we were in Yad Vashem, and just how impact that was on me. I will never forget that. And interestingly enough, I made a new friend on that trip who is also on this call. And every time we see each other, it is with a glad heart that we greet each other, and that's Steve Swadzinski. I cherish his friendship, and we traveled together on that trip, and I'll never forget the relationship that was born out of that.
That's great. Senator Franzen.
Not fair. The ones I had are already mentioned, but now I have the itinerary because I was looking through my emails to clean up just today, and I found the itinerary of 11 days there. And it was the entire package, all the experiences and how it all, just to Tony comment, my husband and I talk about this trip all the time, and he is by no means going on a trip with a group of people he does not know. And we just built such great relationships with each and every one of you that were there. And it just was a transformative experience in many levels, on a religious level, spiritual level, food. My husband loved that he beat Sotsinski's record to get up to a Masada. So those are fun. The Druze experience, going to Palestine, the peace wall. There's so many elements of it that the whole package was just amazing. And I just can't pick one, but I love food. So maybe I'll pick food.
Well, that's for sure. Well, thank you to our panel. We really appreciate your being here and sharing your thoughts. And we all know that everyone is facing a very, very challenging legislative session, both in terms of the fact that, you know, it's just going to be logistically very difficult being remote. And we know how hard you all have worked to make it accessible for people. And that's much appreciated. And so we do want everybody to know that if there's issues important to them, that they should reach out to you, and that, you know, you will do your best to respond and listen to your constituents. And we've got a tough budget ahead of us, and Ethan will be around to visit with all of you on the issues that are important to the Jewish community and the broader religious community. And I just want to say thank you to all of you, and we all wish you a wonderful, safe, happy, healthy holiday and a wonderful new year where we have the hope of being together again. So thank you very much again, and tonight you can go to sleep early. Now I will turn it over to Wendy to play a closing song as folks sign off. And I just want to thank everybody for joining. It's not the same at all, of course. We're all tired of Zoom all day, but it was really wonderful to see so many people here. And you know, our famous saying is next year in Jerusalem, but next year may we have latkes together and celebrate the holiday with one another. So thank you. Happy Hanukkah, happy holidays, and good night.
Thank you, everybody. Oh Hanukkah, come light the menorah. Let's have a party, we'll all dance the hora. Gather round the table, we'll give you a treat. Sippy bone to play with and latkes to eat. And while we are playing, the candles are burning low. One for each night, they shed a sweet light to remind us of days long ago. One for each night, they shed a sweet light to remind us of days long ago.
Happy Hanukkah. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, Judy.
Hanukkah.
Chag Sameach. Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Steve, and everybody with the JCRC.
Thank you, Chaplain.
Thank you, Chaplain Wynn.
Great event, guys. Thank you. Happy Hanukkah.
Thanks, Lori.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve, team, everyone, JCRC. Thanks for having me. Have a great Hanukkah season.
Thanks, Ed. Great to see you.
Take care, Steve.
Andy, we got to get Lifetime open again so you can shoot some hoop, baby. Right?
Yep. I'm waiting.
I'm waiting.
Maybe tomorrow he'll give us the green light. I don't think so. Take care of yourself.
You be well, okay? Stay safe and well, Andy. Take care.
Bye, Judy. Talk to you tomorrow morning.
Bye. Yep.
Steve, nice to see you. Good job.
Brian, I was thinking about you because you went on the